shirka Professor Abdulqaadir Dhicisow sidoo kale aan ka reebin madax qeybeedka hormuudka qaybta siyaasadda ee kuliyadda cilmiga bulshada Ustaad Cumar Cabdi sidoo kale waxaan salaamayaa martida iyo madaxda kale ee meesha fadhisa aniga magacayga waxaa la maxaa Cabdullaahi Maxamuud waxaan ahay arday undergraduate senior student barta علومة السياسة ده وحنا وحكي لك تاج عند أمة الصوماليات وحنا قرني أني جو لبا دنيرة وسحيبة ده وراقد عن كسابسن يعني دورك هالأبورة ده دنيرة ده كعياران state rebuilding كا يهرمرين تبولشة أنا وكيس استاديهان ودورني مقالة تانية مقدشو سيجود هدي أنسيد دول مرنو markuu ugu horeyso horta waxaan u baahanahay waxa la dhaho inaan ogaano youth initiative ama youth led initiative waxa la yiraahdo marka hore horta waxaan u baahanahay inaan ogaano waxa la yiraahdo youth led initiatives si guud youth led initiative markii la qeexayo waxa lagu qeexaa inay tahay yani wax ay ran gareynayaan sidoo kalena ownay yihiin youthska so this research يعني wuxuu isku dayaa ama wuxuu explore gareynayaa sida hal abuuradaas dhalinyarada ay kaga qayb qaateen horumarka yani bulshada iyo dawlad dhiska ayagoo diiradda saarayo magaalada tan ee Muqdisho objectiveska ciwaankeena wuxuu ka jawaabayaa saddex su'aal oo ah yani sidee ugu qayb qaateen hal abuurada bulshada dawlad dhiska iyo horumarka bulshada sidoo kalena maxaa jira caqabado ah iyo fursado ah iyo yani maxaa la filayaa what are the future implications for these youth initiatives haddii aan ku hormarno daraasadda ay sameysay UNDP waxaa lagu sheegay in youth led initiativeska ay empower gareynayaan decision makingka sidoo kalena ay horumariyaan innovationka iyo civic engagement waxyaabo la xiriira in Soomaaliya marka laga hadlayo these initiatives waxay yani diiradda saarayaan ama address gareeyaan educationka sidoo kalena technologyga iyo governance gaps waxyaabaha dawladnimada yani gapska ka jira si guud despite these emerging success stories marka laga hadlayo wali waxaa jiro yani research gap ku saabsan contributionska ay leeyihiin dhalinyaradaas markii laga eegayo post conflict state reconstruction yani wadan markuu dib u dhis sameynayo dhalinyarada doorka ay ciyaarayaan in Soomaaliya waxaa jirta marka research gap aad u badan يعني citation ahaanna waxay sheegaysaa warbixin ay soo saartay wasaaradda dhalinyarada sanadka markuu waa 2015 cilmi baaristeena waxay yani koobsatay ama aan ku sameynay mixed method approach ayadoo yani quantitative survey sameynayso sidoo kalena waxaan wareysiyo la yeelanay laba xarun oo hal abuur ah oo la kala yiraahdo Iris Hub iyo Alamtara Initiative si guud quantitative-ka waxaan yani sambal ahaan u qaadanay 81 participant oo ka kooban hogaamiyaasha iyo dadka yani volunteerska ah ama dadka ka tirsan member of youth led initiatives ama dhalinyarada hal abuurada ay sameeyeen hogaamiyaashooda iyo volunteerska toolska aan isticmaalay oo ku analyze gareeyna waxay tahay SBSS sidoo kale thematic analysis ayaan sameynay markii aan qaadinay interviewga oo aan ka qaadnay Iris Hub iyo Alamtara Initiative waxyaabaha aan soo ogaanay waxaa ka mid ah in youth led initiativeska ay yani driven ku sameeyeen ama ay hore u kaxeeyeen social cohesionka bulshada inay isku xirmato sidoo kalena innovation inuu dhaco ama ixtiraaq waxa loo sida aan yani ku hayno daatada 49.4 waxay nagu raaceen ama waxay dhaheen strongly agree in youth initiativeskaas ama these initiativeskaas ay ka qayb qaataan horumarka bulshada. tusaale waxaa ka mid ah traininada ay sameeyaan like Iris Hub kuwaasoo yacni diiradda lagu saarayo entrepreneurship waxyaabaha la xiriiro iyo digital skillska. sidoo kale 58 waxay yacni garwaaqsadeen ama agreed ay dhaheen in public participationka ay dhiirigeliyaan ama improvement ay ku sameeyaan. sidoo kale 59.3 waxay yacni sheegaysaa xogta ah in dhalinyarada ay ku hubeeyaan ama ay aasaas ugu dhigaan modern technology skills challengeska ka jira. hal abuurada dhalinyarada youth initiativeska waxay yacni wajahayaan challenges fara badan. so challengeska waxaa kow ka ah financial constraints inay jiraan, caqabado maaliyadeed. tira ahaan ama percentage ahaan 39.5 waxay nagu raaceen inay jirto limited access to resource, inay tahay macnaha major hurdle ama wax hortaagan in dhalinyaradaas ay sameeyaan horumar, sidoo kalena innovationkooda ay sare u qaadaan. sidoo kale waxaa jiro waxa loo political marginalization oo dhalinyarada inta badan yacni representation kuma laha meelaha go'aanada lagu goynayo ama decision making bodieska ma aha ayaga. sida ay nagu sheegayso xogteena 50.6 ama 51 ee nagu raacday inay jirto caqabadaas. sidoo kale waxaa jiro security concerns oo yacni hal abuurada dhalinyarada inay mararka qaar yacni shaqayn karin in Muqdisho ayadoo ay jiraan ongoing risks. sidoo kale waxaa jiro waxa loo innovation theft ama dhalinyarada in yacni ay ka baqayaan fikradaha ayaga ka dhex guuxayo in innovation theft lagu sameeyo ama organizationada waaweynka ah ay ka xadaan. achievementska waxyaabaha ay gaareen iyo sidoo kale waxyaabaha hortaagan ama future implicationska waxaa ka mid ah initiativeska like alamtara waxay yacni empower garaysay ama yacni ay training siisay wax kor u dhaafayo 600 oo dhalinyaro ah ayadoo workshops u qabanayso. sidoo kalena yacni most of our respondents ama dadkii noo soo jawaabay waxay garwaaqsadeen in youth initiativeska ay contribution ku sameynayaan state reconstructionka. waxyaabaha futureka noo hortaagan waxay tahay oo implicationska ah 51.9 oo percentage ah waxay aaminsan yihiin ama yacni cilmi baaristeena waxay soo ogaatay inay aaminsan yihiin in loo baahan yahay increased support taageero yacni dheeraad ah. sidoo kalena waa in yacni youth initiativeskaas ay la yeeshtaan collaboration government NGOs si yacni impactiga waxyaabaha ay wadaan ayaga ka dhex guuxayo sustain ay u noqoto oo isii jirto. discussionkeena markii aan soo aruurinay intaasoo xog ah waxaan soo ogaanay in youth initiativeska ay yacni catalyze ku sameynayaan innovationka, civic awarenesska, sidoo kalena ay ka qayb qaadanayaan job creationka dhalinyarada. challengeskan waxaa ka mid ah kow financialka iyo institutional frameworks inay jiraan oo dhalinyarada inta ugu badan madasha ama maxaa la sheeg madalaha lagu goynayo gartooda ama decisions bodies-ka inaysan ayaga ahayn. so what our research paper ama yacni researchkeena muxuu recommend gareynayaa? what our recommendations? recommendationskeena waa labadan. kow yacni in la aasaaso national youth fund and mentorship programs, yacni sanduuq ay leeyihiin dhalinyarada hal abuurada leh, sidoo kalena in loo qabto mentorship programs, barnaamijyo ayaga wacyigooda, aqoontooda, everything lagu dhisayo. qodobkeena labaad ee recommendationkeena wuxuu yahay create formal youth representation, yacni formal youth representation caadi ah inay jirto in policy making bodies markii la ansixinayo shuruucda ama xeerarka ku saabsan dhalinyarada. conclusionkeena youth initiativeska yacni ka aasaasan gudaha Muqdisho waxay demonstrate gareeyeen ama yacni ay ixtiraaqeen ama ay sheegeen ama ay ka soo kabsadeen overcoming challenges ama resilience ay muujiyeen dulqaad. sidoo kalena contributionkooda waxay pivotal u yihiin ama very significant u yihiin Somalia's recovery and development. So policymakerska waxaa yacni we recommend them inay prioritize gareeyaan ama ay diiradda saaraan these initiativeska si loo helo xoog weyn oo ku saabsan dib u dhiska Soomaaliya. Si guud aniga oo ku hadlaya afka labada saaxiibadeyda ah ee aan qornay waraaqada waxaan u mahadcelinaynaa qabanqaabiyaasha shirka sidoo kalena martida in dhageysatay waa mahadsantihiin. Thank you.
aad iyo aad u mahadsantahay maxamed. waxaan rajaynaynaa inay madaxda wasiirku inagala joogo ay samayn doonaan sanduuq in dhalinyarada lagu ururinayo lacagta insha allahu. waxa aan sii gudagelaynaa dooda inoogu sii xigta presentationka hadda inoogu xigaa waxa waa inoo soo jeedin doonaa Salvatore Monusco. wuxuu ka hadli doonaa the Somali way to federalism, challenges and perspective. Victoria, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, no, it's thanks a lot. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me, for having given me the opportunity to speak at this very important event. For me, it's always a pleasure, a special pleasure to come to Mogadishu because it's a part of my inheritance, because my two mentors who taught me law in Africa have been professors here in Mogadishu at Somali National University. One was the dean of the Faculty of Law at that time, and the other one was a professor of land law. So it's a warm heart because one of them is not anymore with us, the one who was the dean, and it's a pleasure for me to have taken his heritage in studying law, especially with reference to Somalia. I have to apologize for my delay, I'm sorry, but it was due to Ethiopia. And I left home 2 days ago, and I managed to arrive just a and a half ago. I remember that when Alitalia was flying, the British were saying that the acronym for Alitalia is always late in takeoff, always late in arrival. And this is the reason probably why it became bankrupt, but I have to say that Ethiopian is in the good way to take the heritage. Anyway, my topic is very sensitive, I know, and please forgive me for trying to take this very sensitive topic for Somalia. It's not my intention actually to teach to Somali people about Somalia and Somalia and how the governance of the country has to be made. I want to share, it's more than 30 years that I'm working on African law, and I'm also working on Somalia, and it's just the idea of sharing my thoughts with you. And obviously I would be very glad to have your feedbacks and comments in what I'm going to say. I'm not going to go through the entire paper, I'm sorry. I have only 15 minutes. The paper is with the organizers, so you may have access to it. But the idea of this paper comes from the same idea of federalism. What I discovered during my studies is that the idea of federalism actually is not new in Somalia. I discovered that when there was the Italian trusteeship administration, one of the discussions was exactly to make an independent Somalia under a federal system. And this idea at the very end was refused because it was said this will undermine the unity of the country. Somalia must be a whole country, a sole country. And the idea was exactly to keep Somalia united, and the idea of the federalism was refused at that time. Obviously, the situation changed after the civil war, more than 20 years of civil war, you know this better than me, have created a sort of empty tank to be filled. And the idea now has been the one to resume the discussion about federalism. We know that we have a lot of issues here in Somalia about the federal system. First of all, I have to say that the constitution is still a provisional one. And this obviously does not help, because the articles, I'm not going through any single article. I'm sorry, I don't have a presentation because I am a boomer, not a millennial, so it's something that I don't like that much. So I was saying, I will not go through each article of the Constitution. You know this better than me. But the idea is that we have very general principles about federalism that have to be, let's say, put in practice. Is not a case that the Constitution is provisional. The same division of the competencies between the central state and the federal states is not clearly defined in the Constitution. And this we know. You know this better than me. And this is creating a lot of problems. It's creating a lot of problems because basically no one knows or is supposed to know who is expected to do what. And sometimes there are overlaps, sometimes there are challenges, sometimes there are conflicts because of this, let's say, very general approach that the Constitution has. And if we look at the constitutions of the different federal states, we find provisions that are in contrast with the provisional constitution, but at the same time, we have a situation, paradoxically, where the federal countries have their own constitutions. And let me say that the use of the word constitution does not help. And we have a central government, a country in general, a federal country that has still a provisional constitution. And this obviously is not helping a lot. I could go a lot in the provisions that are contrary in the different fields. One for all is for example, the possibility to entertain international relations, that it should be something that is supposed to be reserved to the state. But we have some constitutions that say that the president of the federal states can have direct relations with other countries. And this happened, we know. So there is another important issue that is, in my view, not really properly researched, if I may say so. The fact that, in any case, a constitution is a product of a given culture. That is the Western culture. The Westphalian state is something that was born in the Western world. Has been brought, the idea of the state, the central state, the Westphalian state has been brought to Africa by the colonizers. It's not something that goes from the culture of the African people, including Somalia, especially a country, you know this better than me, that historically is made by a chiefless society. The idea of having someone who is the commander-in-chief is not very common in Somalia. And this is the reason why, in the way in which we are, let's say, approaching the idea of federalism, the risk is the Balkanization of the country. And there is, obviously, this is a serious risk, especially because we know historically that we could have external forces who obviously get an advantage of having a Balkanized Somalia. So I think I have to almost to close. The idea is that in general, let me add one more thing, that the comparative studies about federalism in Africa tell us that this experience has not been really successful. If we look at Cameroon, if we look at Nigeria, same Ethiopia, in every experience that we have in Africa about federalism, the way in which it has been practiced has undermined the unity of the nations. So in my view, there are two possibilities. And I'm going to conclude, and therefore, and after I will be very glad for questions and comments, and also objections, obviously. But I think that, first of all, the idea is that there should be definitely let me use the word Somalization of the Constitution. In which sense? My personal view is that the Constitution can be obviously the policeman of the legal system of a given country, but it must reflect the culture of the country. Otherwise, it will stay as a piece of paper that is there, that is used when it's convenient, but does not reflect to the people. There is an interesting work of a professor of constitutional law in Benin that says that basically the African people are very foreign to the idea of constitution. They are foreign to the idea of the significance of having a system governed by a constitution. They are alien also to the idea of a vote. What is a vote and what are the consequences of the vote? So, going back to my conclusions, first of all, as I said, the constitution of a country should reflect the culture of the people. Because at the very end, the law is not made for us as law professors to make discussions or to present papers. The law is for the people. And the people must be confident with the law. Otherwise, they simply don't apply the law. And in Africa, we have plenty of experiences where the law that has been asked by the International Financial Organization, structural adjustments, have been made. They are there. And then the people do something else. Because there are even not the instruments to apply the law. The other possibility is, okay, we don't want to go back to an experience where the country was a unified country. But then, and we want to have the possibility of autonomies. Because what I see from outside, and the few times I come to Somalia, is that at the very end there is a willingness to autonomy, but there is also a willingness to, let's say, when the things are not going well, okay, there is the central state. So autonomy is okay. Let's try it. There are also other patterns that could be used. One is, for example, the high level of autonomy that we have and this is looking at what is going on in Somalia, could be a possibility, for example, that what is going on let me use only the pattern, not the let's say, pathological application that has been made in China about Hong Kong and Macau. But the idea is that the so-called one country, two systems, where there is a high level, a total high level of autonomy. Hong Kong and Macau, they have their own currency. They have their own government. They have their own basic law. That is not a constitution, because the constitution of a country is only one. But they have basic laws that are similar to constitution without the matters that are reserved to the central state. They have their own monetary authority. They have their own everything, autonomous. Even when they collect taxes, the taxes stay collected by Hong Kong government, they stay in Hong Kong. They collected in Macau, they stay in Macau. But then you have to manage the special administrative region, call it as you like, federal state, with your autonomy. So this means that you have to make your taxes, you have to maintain the people, and only a few important competencies are reserved to the central government, in this case as a sort of overview of the functioning of the state. It is a possibility that we can think, but obviously we have to work. Let me use an anecdote to close my intervention that I read when studying a book about a professor of constitutional law here in Somalia, at Somali National University in the final part of the 80s, was Professor Ahmed Ashir Botan. Exactly. And he was saying in a discussion we had with Professor Guadagni that there was a session in the Senate with the 79 Constitution when there was the mistake that was made, there was the 60 Constitution, when the mistake that was made by the Italians was to copy-paste the Italian Constitution. That was obviously a big mistake because the President of the Republic, that in Italy is a sort of notary of the Constitution, was elected by the main clan. And the Prime Minister, who has the power, was coming from a minority clan from Somalia. And when there was a clash, obviously, in the parliament about the distribution of powers, a member of the Senate who was always silent when a young member of the parliament was always objecting to the people from the president clan to say, we want to do this. No, we have a constitution that says this. No, you cannot do this. This old member of the Senate called one member of the security and he said, could you ask this boy and his book to go away so that we can work in the Somali way? I think this is the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. aad iyo aad buu mahadsan yahay Dr. Manusko. Waxa aan hadda rabaa inaan ku soo dhaweeyo intaan ku soo dhawaa qaybtii hore ee hadal jeedinteena waxa aynu ku darsannay 2 daqiiqo marka 2 daqiiqo waad naga raali ahaanaysaan waxaan rabaa inaan hadda inteena salaada casar u dareerin salaada casar marka ay soo tukanay shaha soo cabno waxay noo bilaabi doona badan discussionskii oo rag khubaraha ay inoo joogi doonaan oo waxa inoo daadihin doona baafow waxa kale oo badan discussionka inooga qayb gali doona Prof Dr. Hassan Mahadalla rectorkii hore jaamacadda ummadda Cabdiraxmaan Faarax Lunge Dr. Guuleed Saalax Sayna Maxamed Xuseen iyo Dr. Xuseen Sheekh Maxamuud intaa ka hor oo salaada marka aan soo tukana hadda waxa aan ku soo soo dhaweyn doonaa video yar oo kooban oo ka hadlaya taariikhda SSI oo ay inoo soo jeedin doonto Anarita Bungeli marka videoga inoo saar kadibna marka waynu salaada inu bixi doonaa insha Allah.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this important event for asking me to speak of our work at the presence of the Somali authorities, who are the decision makers of policy for the country in all fields, and particularly in the field of education. I really think that education is the pillar for development and reconstruction. Now, our project started in 1978, and we still are here and hope to continue as we can to produce useful things for Somalia. It is not easy to summarize in 10 minutes almost 50 years of research work. Therefore, I'll be necessarily very schematic, but I hope to be able to give you an idea not only of the concrete results that we have obtained in terms of publications and so on, but also of the spirit, the intentions behind it, what guided us. The first phase of our work goes from 1978 to 1989. Our objectives were mainly two. First, teach Italian to students at the Somali National University, where Italian was the language of instruction, because the university was in cooperation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy. Second, help the development and standardization of the Somali language, describing it at the same time, and at the same time training young Somali scholars as linguists in order to be able to work with us and keep on working on Somalia after we would eventually left Somalia. As a result of these objectives, we developed methods for teaching materials and for courses in Italian and academic purposes. But the second objective is the most relevant in this context, because we worked at the description of Somali language at all levels, especially grammar at all levels of description, and also we produced several articles, scientific articles in several occasions, and starting producing our collection, Somali Studies. In those years, we published 9 volumes that would refer not only our research on Somali language, but also on other aspects of Somali culture and environment. And you can see that if you look at the list of our volumes. For the lexical project, we produced the Somali-Italian Dictionary, published in 1985 with about 35,000 lemmas, started to work on the production of a big monolingual dictionary, the Kamusta Somaliga, and also we started to work on the Italian Somali dictionary, bilingual dictionary. Then in 1990 starts the second phase that goes up to 2009. This is the time when the civil war was going on in Somalia, and did not allow us to go with our work. And therefore, we were in Rome, and we decided to have to make some decisions. We could have gone on with our research as, university professors and doing our research work maybe on Somali, since that had become a very important field for us, but even other things, or else try to keep alive our Somali Studies project and go on with the objectives that we had established at the beginning, back in 1978. And that was what, in fact, we did. That was our choice. In this phase, we finished the Italian Somali Dictionary, the Kamusta Somaliga, the Grammar for School. We wrote, Professor Abdal and myself wrote the Grammar for Schools of Somaliga, and many other things, including other volumes of the Collana Studi Somali. So while the civil war was destroying the entire educational system of the country, consequently the Somali language was losing its status of national language and language of instruction, we went on producing instruments to give Somali language the possibility to be once again the pillar of the educational system that had to be reconstructed. Because, you know, language it's an extremely important element in our life, and is the strongest instrument for the building of a national identity. As I had occasion to say in one of the meetings of the conferences of the Somali Studies International Association in Helsinki back many years ago. So the Civil War was producing distractions, and, well, just a few concluding words. And I would like also to thank all the people who have been, over these years, in different times, at different times, in different places, worked with me for the Somali Studies project. There have been quite a number, both Somali and Italians, and without their work, it wouldn't have been possible to produce all we have produced. Now it's up to those who are in Somalia now to make use of all this work and in a way, do things that will divulgate the information, for example, for the laws all over the country, and for all the materials that will be useful for the system of education. Please try to create the conditions for which those things will be used. One example for all, the Kamuska Duksiagka of Somaliga, that Professor Amdal and myself produced as a concise dictionary from the Kamuska of Somaliga, that has a full set of didactic applications and so on, should be introduced in Somali schools in order to make the students able to use their language in an appropriate way. So I hope that this work will be, will give some concrete results in Somali's reality. Thank you again to everybody.